Pleasure to see you today. Today we have Raman from Investing with a Difference. He is an EOS community builder. He's got an awesome EOS channel, and me and him are going to talk about EOS and everything EOS for you. So Raman, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you got going on.
Yes, hello everyone. So I think a lot of you know me from my YouTube channel. So just a little bit of background. I'm an engineer by profession, started early days of smartphones and working on the technology side these days in marketing. But from the EOS world, I think I got really early days of blockchain. I was really excited about the potential of blockchain. And I'm very passionate about building communities in terms of people understanding things. And there's a lot of misinformation out there in the financial world. So even before blockchain, I think I was running a lot of communities for teaching people. That's a name, I think, Investing with a Difference. It's as you can see, it was nothing related to cryptos originally. I was mostly focusing on financial education, and that was more of my passion and hobby. And from there, I think as I moved on, as I got involved in blockchain and EOS, I think I pivoted, and that's how you know me. So thanks a lot, Brandon, for bringing me here. And let's see what we can discuss today and maybe educate people about more things in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And Investing with the Difference is a cool channel. That's how I found you as well. And the education aspect is interesting to me because that's something I'm really interested in as well. I come from a teaching background. I was a commercial flight instructor and then also did some biotech education. And so the financial, you said you were educating people about financials, and what were some of the issues you were talking to people about, or what were you educating them about? Because I know there's a lot of, what was your niche there?
Sure. So let me go back. When I have been as you can understand, I'm not from US. I came from India. That's where I was educated. Then I traveled the world because of my job. I was in Korea. I was in Europe, and then for last 8 years I'm in US. Wherever I've gone, I have talked to people about how they invest, what they understand, and especially around education. What I found is it's a very common theme across the world that most of the kids or at the school level, there is no financial education. People learn about technology. People learn about math, science. They don't learn about how to manage money, how to plan their finances. And this is a big missing piece which I found. And that was my as I was traveling and talking to people, so I was very passionate about financial education because I see a lot of people, they spend their lives, I think 80% of the people in the world, they are just planning how to save enough or how to actually go through the day having enough money. And in those situations, if you don't even have a basic financial education, how do you even achieve your life goals? So that is what really motivated me to keep doing this community work. And in the process, of course, I made a lot of friends. Means that's what I love about community building. I learned myself because as you can see, I'm not a financial background person. It was more of a hobby. And when I met a lot of people, I was building these communities. I made a lot of friends, and that made me learn. And this just kept on going. And that's how I am more and more involved in this world where I can talk about how to invest, what are the things which one should worry about. And of course, I'm pretty new. I am not in a blockchain world for more than, let's say, 1.5 years. So in early 2017, that's when I got involved. So I'm still learning, to be frank. But more I get into it, I realize that this is what I was trying to do in the normal world. When I say education really enables decentralization, while blockchain is providing tools, ultimately how people will be empowered is when people are educated. If they are using the old methods of managing money, of using central exchanges, of not understanding what decentralization means, then it is no use of really implementing blockchains in the real world.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think that a lot of people found their way into cryptocurrency or the blockchain through this education and this tied in with investing because like you said, from another angle, there's some issues with the current system, and people are in debt, and there's these problems that we have that we want fixed, but people don't feel like there's the tools to do them. Even sometimes people educate themselves about the financial markets and feel maybe even more helpless. And it's like blockchain gives this opportunity to not only continue to educate, but also for people to kind of free themselves
Yes.
from the current system. So it's kind of twofold there. But I really think that's a cool way that you came into blockchain. Just to stay on that for a second, because that's something I'm interested in too. With let's say you got a high schooler who hasn't been educated, what would be like the number one or the top three things that you would tell them to kind of prepare financially, or to be financially savvy?
I think the few things which I found which were missing is understanding what you need. Like in terms of, I think I was so even before high school. Let me tell you, means I was a volunteer in my son's kindergarten, where we were doing a basic financial education for kindergartners at a very very early stage, and teaching them a difference between need and a want. This
Mm-hmm.
was a great experience. Like what is a need and what is really a want, and people like spend a lot of money on what they want. And at a 5-year olds and 6-year olds, I can really talk to, and they do understand this concept. So if we take it further, when we go to high school and beyond, when people really start understanding, people start actually earning money. I think one of the biggest thing which they don't understand is planning for future, in terms of whether they understand what's going on in the world. What is like, for example, a lot of people are still spending a lot of money. Like US right now is one of the biggest student loan debt you can see. And
Mm-hmm.
people have understand the importance of education, but they're not understanding that they're putting themselves under such a big burden of a financial debt, that they are not really learning the basic skills of the world by just going to college. So these are the kind of things I would say, that very basic things about how to plan your financial future, how responsibly take debt, and then how to manage your money. And the biggest part is, I think, a lot of trusted entities. If you see that right now, like people still have this idea of financial advisors, where people are just going to financial advisors, they're asking them to put their money into certain instruments which are based on certain rules, which may be based on history, which may no longer apply. And those kind of things, I think people don't understand, and they do not understand the risks of those instruments. And that is another thing I would say, as you grow up, as you start managing your money. um, I think people need to take their the ownership of their own money. And that's, I think, what crypto is actually a very good tool with that. But unfortunately, it has become a speculation tool again. People are not realizing that it empowers them only if they are educated. If they just use the same instruments like what they were doing for in a stock market or any other speculatory market, they are just going to kill their future using crypto. It's not really enabling them if they're going the same path. So those are the risks, the how these speculations work, how the financial world really works, who is really making money in this whole deal. They need to understand those things before, which I don't think even any financial education, any curriculum based education is teaching people that.
Yeah, that's a really valid point. That there's these people they'll handle your money for you, but then they're wanting to, if you give it to a financial advisor blindly, it's the wrong type of financial advisor. They're putting you in programs that they're making good commissions off of, or they're getting paid by insurance companies to put you into this, this vehicle. They don't have a fiduciary duty to the investors. And a lot of people, I mean, it's one of the most common misconceptions, I'm guessing, in financials, is that these people have some sort of fiduciary duty. They're essentially just salespeople putting you into investments,
Yeah.
and taking a portion of it. And so, to your point, one of the most powerful things people can do is just have just a base level of knowledge and being able to make a few of their own decisions. You're much better off taking your investments and making like 3 of your own decisions and monitoring yourself, and handing it over to a financial advisor who's going to be taking tons of percentages off, killing a lot of the profit long term. And that segues into crypto. That's kind of the golden ticket, or the real draw to crypto, is that it almost forces people's hand. Like, hey, take control of your money. Like, decide where you're going to put it and what you're going to do with it, and don't just hand it off to someone and set it and forget it. And so, and I mean, down the road, that's kind of an interesting thought, is that maybe I wonder what financial advisors within crypto may look like in the future. And with the transparency, maybe they wouldn't be able to, take as many of the profits, or, not, maybe we'd be able to force more of a fiduciary relationship in the future, with cryptocurrency and the transparency on the blockchain there. That could be kind of interesting. So, yeah, cool. Well, that's a great background that you come from, and important too, hugely important. I like it, man. I like it. Well, let's dig into EOS a little bit. So, what brought you to EOS as opposed to the other parts of the area? It seems like this is one of your focuses. So, what kind of
Yes.
sets EOS apart for you?
So I think for EOS, it was more about when I started, like, of course, everybody starts with Bitcoin. And then you look at what are the blockchain use cases, and then you automatically move toward Ethereum. And I think 2017, when I really started, it was a huge wave of new Ethereum projects. So I got into like very excited about what was happening. There were a lot of ICOs coming. There were some very appealing use cases which are coming to the world, where you can actually make and decentralize a lot of things. In the process, I think I learned all the issues around the scalability in terms of what was Ethereum was facing. I think the famous example is CryptoKitties. I think everybody got to learn how a simple a very, very simple app can really block the whole network. And from there on, I think, of course, there was this discussion around what is next in EOS, even the scalability of Ethereum itself. And in parallel, I think I was, without really knowing about it, I was already started using Steemit. I've already started learning more about these various other platforms. And more I digged into it, then of course, as you can imagine, you cannot stay away from the whole legend of Dan Larimer. So I heard about him. I started investigating, and then realized like what he has done in terms of BitShares, in terms of Steemit project. And he had some very interesting thoughts. I think at that time, EOS was just kicking off the grounds. The ICO was still going on, and there was a lot of negativity around it. And usually when I see a lot of negativity, I get attracted to that in terms of investigating what's going on, because there is one feeling I have had in a popular media. People usually, any new thought, any great idea which comes into the world, the first thing is for people is to attack it. And so I thought EOS is getting attacked a lot, so let me go and investigate. And then I really dig deeper and deeper, and I realized that there is a merit to the way they are doing things. And then I really started getting involved. So I think in early 2018, that's when I really got deep into EOS. And then more I learned about it, about the problems they're trying to solve, how it can really be a real world project where you can really make application which can scale. The free transactions, I think, was the biggest feature which attracted me, because it was like, for example, when there was keep going back to the CryptoKitties. So I'm a person who tries things. I just don't read and agree to whatever people are saying. So I actually set up an account. I played CryptoKitties, and I was like really frustrated that when I'm putting my kitty on or for sale or anything, and nothing happens, why am I paying gas? Now, even though it's a silly game, it was a pretty bad user experience which is not how the real world works. So that's how I got to more and more excited about EOS, and it kept on going. I think it's more about, as we say, I think in a small group of people, so I have some close communities and investors, we keep talking about it. So I say that like if you spend half an hour into EOS, you think it's a scam. If you spend like 2 hours into EOS, you realize how great it is. And if you spend like 10 hours into EOS, you cannot go to any other project after that.
Yeah, that's true. That kind of happened to me. I kind of continually went down the rabbit hole, and other parts of my channel continued to fall off. And then it's like, okay, you know what? I found my niche. I'm going for it. So, yeah, absolutely. And I really liked, I really like the intermediary, because when you have proof of work, it's this, the code is the law. And then on the opposite end of that, you have kind of this bureaucracy and this red tape and this inefficiency that we're trying to build around. And and for me, delegated proof falls in the middle of those two somewhere, where as humans we do have the ability to govern ourselves, but it becomes inefficient as it becomes bloated. And I think that the delegated proof of stake is that intermediary area where we can cut off a lot of the bloating, but we still have the possibility to self-govern with the blockchain as a tool that we can use as humans, as opposed to just going only the code is going to work. Maybe someday, when we're much further along with building algorithms and AI and things like that, that's a possibility. But right now it seems, I don't think we're there yet. And that's part of something that attracts me to EOS. So, yeah.
No, true. I think governance is a big part of it. And I think, means I'm not an expert in what's how the governed blockchain would look like. I think everybody's still learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's still early days. We can call it an experiment right now. As you can imagine, I think it's not easy. Like when you bring in, you need to understand that when blockchain was introduced and the real use cases of blockchain people were thinking about, it was about removing that trusted entity, removing that the one person or one corporate you need to trust, and bringing a human element back into this is challenging. So I think that's what EOS is trying to strike a balance. I would say it's not going to be that easy because we cannot just, while we are trying to do a governed blockchain, bringing humans and making the right decisions, then the question comes about the basic use case of blockchain itself, because we already have humans governed systems in place outside blockchain world. So you cannot kill the blockchain use case and the trustless entity, the feeling of trustless entity, and the kind of use cases we can build around it to bring in the human element back. So that's, I think, the challenge which EOS is facing right now. There has to be a balance which has to be developed, which is not there yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and that's kind of the main counter argument, is that blockchain is to remove this trust, and now EOS is trying to add it back in, and people are really pushing back about that. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, for anyone who's been in the blockchain space and watched it develop, it makes a ton of sense. People say we're trying to get rid of having to trust people, and now this blockchain comes along and they want us to trust people. So yeah, it's a very fine balance that EOS is trying to run there, for sure. Something else you mentioned that I think is kind of interesting, and I think for me it's been a decent heuristic for investing, is, and a lot of people say this, but investing in people. And with Dan Larimer going from BitShares to Steam to EOS, I think is an important development. People like to knock the fact that he's had these other projects before, and either that these left him or that they haven't worked as well as that he thought. But that experience to me is far more of a benefit, and it's funny to see people look at that as some sort of negative. So for me, that's something that when I started getting into it was a huge green light for me as well.
Yes. Now, I would like to add to that, right? Means as I have been involved in a lot of early stage startups, like as a mentor or as an angel investor, what I realize is that what we look at when we look for funding, for example, we look at not just the idea; it's about the execution, and execution is determined by the team. So there are a lot of ideas people can bring in. I think there are a lot of DPoS projects. Why EOS is on the top in terms of market cap, in terms of the backing by venture capital funds, is because of the team. It's because of Dan Larimer and the kind of team they have built, because of their experience. So the previous work of the team talks about the future prospects. And that's what we should not forget. So I completely agree with you when you said it was a very important point. That when we look at the success of Steemit, when we look at the success of BitShares, even today, these are the very, very high transaction blockchains, and they are very stably running. Yes, there are limitations. I think that's what he's learning from every time he builds a new blockchain, and he's architecting, he's learning. And EOS is not a finished product by any means. I think EOS is still evolving. And that's what I think, based on his learnings, what the biggest feature of EOS, which we don't talk often, is the upgradability. Like you don't have to fork it. Like if you have to make any changes to the software, we have already made so many running changes in a blockchain which is doing millions of transactions, which is doing so many, which is producing blocks at such a fast pace, doing a running change of software without forking the chain is a huge accomplishment. And I think these are the kind of things which people are totally ignoring when we talk about how like scalable EOS can be, because you can keep upgrading it and you can really make it like, I compare it with Android. Like, for example, people talk about centralized world. So look at in mobile world, you have Android. Google is a central entity. They make open source software, which is Android. And now they give it out and anybody can go make phones, devices. And so that is actually not a real centralized entity. You still need quality, which is coming from a centralized place, but you are enabling the community to go and build around it. So I think that's how I compare it and the potential, because I come from a technology world and I have been involved in smartphones since smartphones were dumb. So let me call it that way, without dating myself. Like in very early days, I've been working on these, and I really feel that EOS can bring the same feature set to blockchain. It can really bring the upgradability, a kind of an open source framework, which is backed by a quality of a centralized entity, which is which has a strong team, which can really give it the authenticity which it needs.
Yeah, and what a great kind of way to conceptualize the EOS's position in the market, or their position moving the blockchain forward, like the Google with the open source phones all being built on it, and the competition for great tools, but the centralized, semi-centralized entity kind of making sure the quality's there. That's yeah, I really like that. Really like that. What do you think? What are going to be the use cases, or what do you see the use cases now or in the near future that are going to give this some legs? Because that's at this point something needs to happen. Where do you think we're at, or where are we going as far as that goes?
So I think in terms of use cases, I think blockchain use cases are pretty much, debate is out there. Like, in terms of you already see a lot of like games which are already moving ahead. EOS is, I think, the biggest transaction volumes today are games. The reason is because people are they are really looking for a kind of a fair system, like what blockchain provides. We keep going back to this trustless part. So whenever you are competing, or whenever you have something which you are using as a system which bets you against another person, you need a fair referee in the middle. That's what makes you feel like that's what builds your trust. That is what builds adoption. So that's what I think blockchain is bringing. So automatically, I think these gambling games and so on are coming into as the first movers, because people are trusting this. They are willing to bet their money in true sense, in literal sense. But let's expand this thought. Now, we need to think about, where do you really worry about the trust? Where, when you are in e-commerce, you are worried about whether I'm getting the fair pricing. In banking, you worry about whether the bank is treating me fairly across the customer base. Am I getting the right kind of products? Am I getting the right kind of terms? Then you talk about the whole law and arbitrations, like lawyers. So even you have can we imagine a world which is run by smart contracts? Can we do? Can you go and sign your rental lease over a smart contract? Can you go back and get arbitrated over blockchain? So these will be very, very interesting ideas. I think means we can all talk about these things as a concept, but there is a lot of potential for blockchain. I think means I'm not the person who is going to first time talk about it. You can imagine every week there is a conference happening in the world talking about blockchain use cases. So coming back to EOS itself, the reason I think EOS can really make an impact is because of the scalability, I would say. Because most of the blockchains right now are suffering from scalability in terms of being user-friendly. And I think with this account name feature, with you can carry your account across any app. And the way it is, there are a lot of great features of EOS which we don't really pay attention to right now. And they are seen as a burden, because people talk about account creation being a big issue. And what they're not realizing is all you need is one account for the rest of your life to interact with the chain. And this is something which people are not really understanding. Like paying a $4 or $5 today is not a big deal when you are getting an entry into a world which will be yours to keep. That will be your identity on the net. So these are the kind of things I think right now the controversies are very trivial, I would say, and it's more about educating people about what is going to happen in future. So again, I'm digressing a bit, but coming back to the use cases, means I think there is no limit. It's about finding places where we can really disrupt the central entities which are really asking you to trust them. And that is, I think, any standard blockchain use case can be disrupted with EOS.
Yeah, and scalability, like you said, and then agility, right alongside of that, being able to change and maneuver. Because, as you're saying, everyone talks about there. I mean, there's a million use cases, but come to think of it, what we need is one stable blockchain that's agile, that as we approach these use cases, we can change and overtake these different parts of these different use cases. Essentially, we need to be able to kind of change, but then the ability to stay on one blockchain as we change to overtake all these different use cases, I think will be really interesting long term. Because I mean, you can approach all the use cases from many different blockchains, but eventually everyone working together somewhere is kind of an interesting thought that could give a lot of power to EOS. So yeah, very, very cool. Very cool. What do you think about the block producers kind of as they stand, and what they're up to, and how you will pick good block producers, or what are your thoughts on the block producers right now?
Sure. So I think the block producers themselves, there are a lot of different kind, right? I mean, some people are focusing on running the chain, and some people are very technical in the nature that they are really making a lot of discussions around the code, how it should evolve, what are the security practices, and so on. Then there's another set of block producers who are helping the community, who are trying to just do their basic operations as running the node, but they're looking for how they can add value in bringing communities. So we need to understand that block producers, as they are defined, they do not need to do much. They can just pick up the code, they can run a node. All they need is to get votes. Now, we need to compare it with a typical democratic system where you select your representatives, and it's up to so that is the power of this DPoS, which is what I really love about EOS, is that you need to define as a voter what you need from this blockchain. Do you need, there can be many strategies to vote. There can be strategy to find block producers which are very stable in, like, technically they know what they're doing to keep this network going in the best performance, and so on. That is a basic need. I think that's a basic requirement from block producers. But what is happening is currently it is more like perception. It's like when you see a person talking about a certain issue, it relates to you, and people tend to get in the direction as, oh, this is the right block producer for me. So I would say that what I try to do is, so in this proxy, I say that right now there are very different needs at different times. So for our proxy, what we are trying to do in Investing with a Difference, I'm saying that at the early stage of a blockchain, we need block producers who are really enabling the community. We need people who are going to, like the block producers who are enabling in terms of, for example, let me tell you about education. So I say that at this stage, we need to bring people on board in EOS. We need to bring education to the community, what EOS stands for. We need to bring adoption. We need to get block producers who are really helping spread the information about how to get started, how to create accounts, how to really set up. So I still see a lot of confusion around, oh, EOS is too complicated. Personally, I've been using EOS ever since it's launched. Right now, if I go back to my Ether wallet, I find that much more complicated. Ethereum is much more complicated for me, even though I used Ethereum for much longer. Because once you get into it, once you start using it, you realize how easy it is. So now, this is a requirement at this stage. So my strategy is to keep evolving as a voting, like from a block producer voting perspective, to keep evolving based on the need of the mainnet, based on the need of the community. So today, I would say in early stages, community building, building trust, building information base, getting people to adopt EOS, and spreading information. I think these are some of the criteria we are using. While I'm still learning about the performance issues, how some of the block producers are really helping with performance tuning and so on, which is also a critical part. Because now, if you see, like EOS Dice is really testing the limits. It's running millions of transactions. They are really sometimes getting clogged because of the CPU issues. So the next level I'm getting engaged with is block producers who are really trying to solve these issues. So as we go along, I think as a community, we need to keep learning the requirements of what's really needed from block producers. And if a certain block producer is not really putting an effort to do that, they should be questioned. And that is the goal I'm bringing in the community.
That's a good point. That's something that I haven't heard before, but the thought that what do we need now, and then that will evolve over time. And we do need a lot of community building now. That's definitely true. Okay, very good. What are a couple of block producers that you that you like, or that are some of your favorites?
So I think it's very difficult to pick a few because, as I say, right, I've been interacting with a lot of them, and when I look at all of them, I think most of them are doing a pretty good job in terms of what they are good at.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to the community building. So I would always take an example of EOS Authority. So you can go to their Telegram channel, and you can still see this very basic question. And I can relate very closely to them because of one more reason, because I do the same thing for using my YouTube channel. I interact with a lot of people. I see comments on my YouTube channel saying, oh, my EOS is still in my Ether wallet. What do I do? So these are the kind of things which, if we are not helping these people, we are not bringing the outsiders in who invested in EOS and who are giving up on EOS because calling it too complicated and telling 10 more people, oh, you know what, EOS is too complicated. And that's what I love about EOS Authority. Even today, they very patiently, both Roshan and Rohan, I see them answering questions on their Telegram channel, creating tools and empowering people. If you look at their tools, they're not saying, oh, you have to figure out, like you have to ask somebody. They are creating tools where you can enter your account name. You can really see a lot of information about what's going on. In terms of either entering your Ethereum keys to find your EOS account. That's what they started with in the mainnet launch process. Then they did, so I did a BP focus series. They were my first guest. So you can go watch them. And I think very, very down to earth people doing very good community work. And that's what I think is great community building, I call it. So they would be my favorite at this moment in terms of community building. But let me not single them out, because there are a lot of other great block producers who are doing a lot of good work, either in community building or maybe tools in terms of enabling people, in terms of running the blockchain in a very efficient way, adding feedback on how we can improve. So I think we have a great set of community, great set of people running these various nodes. And that's what keeps me excited. These are not of course, there are some elements which we don't know. There are people who are just maybe running for profit. So I'm not saying that everything is good. What I'm saying is a majority is still pretty good people, people who have come up from ground up, built these teams based on their passion, based on the interest in EOS, and not just as a mining node, which is for profit.
Yeah. And I realized right when I asked that question, man, I kind of put him on the spot there asking him to pick a block producer, because I talk to a lot of block producers also. And if someone asked me that, I'd be like, I have a list of 30 probably that I could tell you. So it's hard to actually pick one. And to the point that you make is that the majority of the block producers currently are in this as a passion project, trying to genuinely move the ecosystem forward. So they're all adding something really valuable. There's 50 block producers are adding, heart and soul to the blockchain because they want to be here. That may be different. This could look a lot different 5 years down the road when it's flushed itself out a little bit. But as far as the block producers go right now, almost everyone that I've met has been just kind of shocking how involved they are with EOS. So
That's right.
Yeah, so picking a block producer, I realize is that's kind of impossible to do. So many interesting ones out there. I just actually talked to EOS Costa Rica yesterday, and they had an interesting concept of they came from basically a internet infrastructure server background where they had a team already built that this is right up their alley of what they do. So for them to transfer into running a node for EOS and being part of blockchain was really straightforward for them. Their kind of method is running the block producer as you would run a startup. very lean,
Yes.
very bare bones, they're trying to bootstrap. And then as block rewards come in, they plan to put is the highest percentage possible straight back into the EOS community. So they're looking at it as people investing their votes are going to get the highest return or the most bang for their buck with a block producer that's been bootstrapping. So that's kind of just a higher level concept. When you see the other end of block producers who are bringing in the rewards to build a giant kind of infrastructure and team to have this really amazing stable block producer. So there's kind of the two ends of that spectrum. It's interesting to watch it develop. And that's why it's so cool to talk about, EOS with so many different people. Yeah. So, as far as kind of the more current events that are going on with EOS, we've got the worker proposal system, we've got EOS Alliance, we've got the ECAF, and so I know that both of us are kind of the same. We're more in the community building as opposed to deep into the weeds as far as the technical go. But as far as let's start with worker proposal system from your community with investing with a difference. Kind of what do you think some of the community thoughts and angles are with worker proposal system?
Yeah, so I think so. My community mostly is based off the investors who came in as EOS, believing in EOS, and most of them, I think, we have a very common theme. They believe in the project because of the history of Dan Larimer, because of what has happened with Steemit and the potential of EOS in terms of feature set. They are like very educated lot. If you can see, they understand, they want to participate. The challenge, I think, what I'm facing and I'm hearing from community is about the lack of knowledge, lack of what is really happening. So it's like you understand that Dan Larimer sometimes he can be very cryptic. He has been very specific about worker proposals and ECAF and kind of hinted that he doesn't really support that. So that is kind of, I would say, the base where people are coming from. So we are talking about a place where people say, oh, whether we really need it. Of course, the inflation is always a tricky subject because people do not really agree all the time of why do we need to mint money. So I think being in US, we understand this very well, that printing more money is not considered a good thing. And that's exactly what is happening when people look at inflation. And I think the biggest concern I see from the community is why do we need 4% inflation? The second part is, of course, not understanding where this money is going to go. Like worker proposal system right now is being done by maybe some small teams who are very focused on certain subjects, like bringing certain tools to the system, bringing, for example, ECAF arbitration. I think is one of the biggest piece right now. The dispute resolution I see is becoming hot as we can see that the more and more budget is getting defined for it. So these are the kind of concerns people have. I think the base concern is that there is no voice from Block.one because people invested in this based on the reputation of Block.one of Dan Larimer. And if he's not going to say, yes, I agree with what is being come across, even though like I understand the community view that it is a decentralized world, it's a community-driven blockchain now. But it is something which we need to understand in terms of building the consensus. You need to really educate people. And that would be the biggest roadblock to any worker proposal, any of these new systems which are being put in place.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think the feeling of a lack of information from from kind of Dan's side of the worker proposal system it leaves some people kind of lost, because a lot of us, like you said, got into EOS basically on Dan's shoulders. We said, well, he's built this. I trust in this next project and the concept. And as you dig in, you realize that it's got legs. But a lot of people came in because they believe in Dan. And so when he says, I want this burned, or I want this changed, a lot of us take notice. But then we want to know more. Right? Get into it, debate it, get out there and put your side out, because people want to know, because there is a lot of vested interest in people who have put their time, effort into building the worker proposal system. So of course they have a very strong opinion, and they've been so deep into it for so long that they know a lot of the very small angles and points as to why the worker proposal system makes sense, and it does make sense. But then there's kind of this dark pool over here of just kind of Dan saying no, it doesn't, and being semi-cryptic, and you wondering, well, what's he thinking? Is there some big points that we're missing? I go back. I'm still really undecided. I go back and forth a lot on the worker proposal system, and I just ask as many questions as possible, try to get as much information as possible. Go ahead.
So let me add one thing. So I argue about one thing right now in the top 21 block producers, which are voted by the community and the EOS token holders. Is there any single person who can say that these 21 are deserving candidates? Mm-hmm. All of them. If you still have doubts, I do have my personal doubts about some of them in top 10. Mm-hmm. And so that means the voting today is not working the way it should. Mm-hmm. Now, that is, you need to understand that 1% inflation goes towards the block producer rewards. And within that 1%, it is divided across 21 producing nodes and a lot of backup block producers. Now, that means it's a very tiny part of inflation, which is attracting some block producers who are not deserving. Now, creating a fund, which is maybe 10 times or 20 times more, that is 4% inflation, you are attracting those people to even manipulate this chain more. So even very, very small inflation today is attracting those people who are not deserving in top 21. And I believe whoever I've talked to, they agree that some of these block producers are not contributing. They are just running a node for profit. And then you are talking about creating a huge fund, which can be voted on. Means I would not agree to that philosophy unless somebody proved to me that the voting is working. We can do referendums, we can do any kind of approval for these kind of systems, but we have some basic issues right now. So while I agree, I am really support this whole democracy. I believe in referendum. I'm really waiting for referendum systems. But I think I need some surety as a token holder, as an investor, to build trust in this system. And I think I agree with you. The people who have spent a lot of time on worker proposal systems, on the arbitration, the ECAF, they are great people. They have been involved in EOS much before me or you or anybody. They have been really going into the depth of what EOS should stand for. So they have their own passionate views. But we need to understand that people invest in certain things, they get biased. And as you said, right, means they have a very, very specific view of the world. And I completely agree with you, and this completely resonates with me, that they have invested their time. They have invested a big chunk of their life in like last 6 months or 1 year. And they're trying to do a great thing. But if they cannot get a buy-in from community, in a democracy, being passionate, being an expert of subject doesn't matter. What matters is bringing consensus, bringing people together. And I think that's what EOS needs. It is not that's what we will really, while we are trying to build a decentralized world and trying to show the world that it is a community-driven project, we cannot have a divided community. So, and referendums as of today, even if we bring it to the chain, as I said, I do not trust in it until somebody can prove me that the voting is not unfair. And that is the question I need people to answer, whether the top 21 block producers, are they selected fairly? Is there any collusion going on in some voters, some big voters? And those kind of things, if somebody can prove and can fix, then I will take any referendum or any decision by the community in favor of these new proposals which are coming in.
Yeah, and you just added a piece of information for me. I've been attempting to build this kind of mental model around how the worker proposal system with with how it relates to the block producers, how much we may lose. So if we would agree that there's possibly one a block producer in the top 10 or the top 20 that is pulling rewards, not adding to the community. Let's say we have 5 to 10% of the rewards roughly that from block producers are kind of disappearing from the system. So my initial thought was, okay, now let's say it's 10%. If 10% of the rewards disappear from the system, are we willing to put the worker proposal fund with 4% in, 1 to 4%, depending on where that falls, and just as a given that we're going to have this leakage of 10%. We're going to lose 10% of what this worker proposal fund is to some sort of, let's just call it fraud to be simple. So when you start looking at that, you ask how much is acceptable for the benefits that we get from the worker proposal system. How much leakage is acceptable? Is 10% an acceptable amount of leakage for all of the projects that they're planning for the worker proposal system? Now, the piece that you added there was that actually the worker proposal system is maybe much a larger piece of the pie than we give it credit for, because with the block producers, that 10% is spread over 20 block producers, whereas with the worker proposal system, these chunks of money are going to come out to individual projects. The incentive is multiplied much greater than it is with block producers, like you said, possibly 10 or 20 times. So now that percentage makes a much larger difference. It's much more. There's much more reward incentive for someone to scam the worker proposal system than there is to scam the block producer system. So I'll have to turn that over in my head a little bit more, but that's kind of the mental model that I've been working with, just to because there is a trade-off. That's a thing with the worker proposal system, is everyone agrees, yeah, we're going to lose some of that money to projects that either kind of fall through or don't have legs, or we're kind of outright scams, or we're just people voting for their friends, etc. It's a given that as it stands, we're going to lose some. The question is how much, and is that an acceptable amount for what we get from the
Sure.
overall system?
And one more thing I would like to add is you need to understand today in the BP voting, these let's assume there is only one colluding entity, even though you can always debate there are more than one right now in the top. Today, they are not killing the system because every voter can vote for 30 block producers. So ideally, they can actually manipulate everybody, because if they are able to vote for 1 or 2 in the top 10, they can easily vote all 21. The reason they are not doing it is because it will be very obvious and the chain will die, and that is like killing the golden hen. Now, when it is a worker proposal, it's a one-off thing. So you do not, nobody will notice when they are leaking these funds, because these are going to be accepted and voted on. So you need to understand, it's not about just the percentages, it's about the model. It's a one-off thing which is going to go as inflation. It's a continuously leaky bucket. You are continuously leaking inflation. Now, this is going to be a much bigger honeypot. So the amount is bigger. The impact to the chain is minimal, because it's going to be absorbed by inflation, and which is not going to be seen. If the chain is successful, nobody will care about it. Just keep leaking 4%. But is it really needed, and is it really fair? That's my question. So let me give you another argument. People talk about all these great tools we need, all these maintenance, all these how to develop EOS. Today, tell me what are the top tools EOS has, and who paid for it? If you look at the wallets, all of them are done voluntarily. If you look at Scatter, I would say is one of the biggest utility. Without Scatter, there is no dApp which can run. And it was done without any worker proposal fund. If you look at Greymass wallet, if you look at what EOS Authority did with the fallback keys mechanisms, so many tools they have built. A lot of block producers are building amazing tools. There is already an incentive for them, for block producers, to keep working towards community tools. There is already an incentive for people to run this node successfully. We are trying to build a commercial project. There are rewards in place. I am actually in favor of increasing block producer rewards, maybe to bring in more block producers. Like, for example, from backup block producer, increase the pay for backup block producers, keep the system strong. There are a lot of other ideas which are floating around. So again, as I said, I'm not against building referendum system. I'm not against building other things which are one-off things which we need funds for. And if nobody's building, we can allocate funds. But my question is, do we really need funds? Because there are a lot of motivated people in the community. They're already building tools. If there is a need, they will work on it and they will do it. And they're getting handsomely rewarded for it. Like a lot of people have no, as you said, you talk to certain block producers and they have a lot of experience running a node. I'm talking to a lot of block producers who have no experience, and still they are successfully running a node. They're learning on the job. But what they're doing better is they have a different kind of experience. They have experience of building tools. They have experience of things which matter to an end user. Which, while yes, running a successful node is very important, this diverse nature of block producers. Some of them have no experience of running a node, but they have much more experience interacting with people, bringing useful tools. And that is what the strength of this DPoS is. We have 21 block producers. Everybody has their own strength, and the community is choosing based on different things they value. So it's a very, very successful chain. Like 3 months into the mainnet, we have amazing products. We have amazing tools. We have apps which are breaking records. Means no Ethereum, nothing has come close to what we have achieved in 3 months. So the question is, all the arguments I agree with. Means there are ideal world scenarios where we need some great developments which can happen using more funds. But we need to answer a question whether we want to first build trust in the system, first bring more adoption and bring the community together, or do we want to divide the community just by going a certain path, which is being seen as questionable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And so from a, like you said, you were in venture capital. I know that sometimes you know, throwing more money at a project actually slows that project down or hurts it. Do you see some sort of crossover there, like where more money and more just an influx of cash may hurt?
So I kind of agree to a certain extent. So see, in the venture world, when we talk about more money, it is still centralized. It is for profit, where company is handled by, and the most of the funds are handled by people who have the biggest stake in it, and they are working for profit. So that is not a community-driven exercise. So I have seen some projects which are community-driven projects, for example, non-profits, and in that, when venture puts their money, that I have seen exactly what you have said. When you put more and more money, you actually end up creating some honeypots in the system where people are not working towards profit. They are working towards a certain goals which can be projected as great for the community, but they are acting as certain profit centers within that system where people are trying to divert funds for the project they are interested in. So yes, that is there is a very fine parallel with this when you compare it with in terms of non-profits. And that's what I think this worker proposal system is trying to do. And that's why I see that even if we do this worker proposal system, I would like to see for-profit companies coming and competing for these proposals, because the capitalism takes care of it. So if we try to build a system where we are rewarding people for doing something, and just because they are non-profit, they are not making money, that usually creates more misuse, as I have seen in real world, versus creating a fair market where you create a need and then you let for-profit companies to come and bid for it. And that is that makes it much more easier to manage. That's make it very transparent, because now people are saying, oh, I'm working for profit, it makes sense for me to do it, and now I want to put a proposal which can beat the other person. And that will create, I think, how I envision, like so let me come again and say that I'm not really against worker proposal system or anything. I may come out like that because I'm worried about the way it is defined today. But I'm trying to tell you is that it can work if we put together a system which is kind of objective, which is driven by a simple process of we have a need which is voted by the voters, while the actual proposals are free market where anybody can come and participate in it and deliver on it. And the objective definition of that proposal is what is voted on, rather than a budget which is just approved without understanding what it takes to build that system.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I was considering your example of a leaky bucket and how the worker proposal system could be. It's more of an anonymous honeypot that people could. So because it's a one-off, as you said, entities could collude and then approach it from this angle, get this worker proposal, and then there's a new worker proposal. The same entities can collude as a different, and come as a different entity and take that. And so what makes me nervous thinking that way is there's this ability for almost one centralized entity to collude over a broad, over many different attack vectors and just continue to pull out of the worker proposal system with their voting power and with their, with some, and so that is solved in some ways by what you're saying there, which I think is, I haven't heard, but someone must have been saying this, but because it's so straightforward, but worker proposal systems being voted on for the project, and then free market competing, basically bidding on getting that project done. I think that's
so instead of EOS building centralized committees like worker proposal committee, ECAF committee, and so on, I would like to see EOS building a system and asking free market agents to come and bid for those projects. So that's what my idea of any of these projects is. And the reason is, I think it's not going to be easy to convince people about that this is not a centralized world, right? Because it's ultimately about trust. Means EOS job is to run a blockchain which is trusted in, and plus you cannot enforce, right? Means okay, let's get back to ECAF now. Means ECAF is a very, very controversial subject, and that is because we did not educate people. If you remember, around the mainnet launch, around all the buzz in the Reddit or anywhere, you talked about EOS allowing reversal of transactions. Now, this was a big controversy. So why do we want that in an early stage in the project when we are very happy about all the milestone we are reaching, but you need to understand EOS is, even today we have 300,000 accounts, and most of them are many people have multiple accounts. So I would be surprised if we have more than 100,000 real EOS users. And with those real 100,000 people, we are like 0.001% of the world population. We are in very early stage to be calling ourselves as somebody who know blockchain, who know adoption. While we are happy about these millions of transactions, we are way away from getting real adoption of EOS. And we don't want to build these kind of controversial systems in place and drive people away and drive corporates away, or anybody who is asking these questions of whether you are real blockchain, whether you are real trustless system. We don't want to be in a controversy which Ripple is facing, or some other projects which are seen as centralized. So that is my worry as a community member. I would say I would keep raising my voice. And that's, I think, we need to worry about.
Okay. And so you are thinking, what type of governance do you envision, or how do you think that mediation should be handled?
I think, as I said, I'm not an expert in governance. I would say I'm more of an observer. I would saying that, okay, this is something which is objectionable or this is acceptable. Now, what can be built, I would say, is already working very well. So the way it was defined is we have this block producers we need this 2/3 block producer to make any change. So that's already working. We have any change which comes across, it's voted by block producers. I would like to see a governance where we have, I think EOS Alliance is trying to achieve it. I'm yet to see what comes out of it, but there are a lot of debates, a lot of people getting involved. I would say that is a great step. But again, that is a totally independent entity, not coming from EOS, not coming from Block.one. So that is kind of a concern for me. I think what we should be building is these communities, which we are saying that how to educate, how to get more people involved. The second part is the governance we can build once we have voter participation. Today, if we are saying that outside the big whales or big all the people, we have like only 27,000, 28,000 accounts voting, and most of those 28,000 people, they are trying to figure out how to vote and how to really select block producers, and we have not created enough resources for that. So this is what we need to support right now, to create a first education, create more and more contents, I think, and then we start from there and create the governance and let the block producers run it. So I would say we should not create some parallel systems. We already have a governance model where block producers are looking at what to introduce, and referendums can be brought in. and there can be one of the voice of token holders. But I still don't know whether we are there yet, where we can take that vote as fair vote and start implementing those changes. So that's what my concern is.
Yeah, and it sounds like one of the main concerns is that we're still so small that this is basically voted on, and these decisions are being made by a pretty really small group of people, yes. Basically, until we have a few million people voting, until this is more decentralized, let's say, then there's only a few people that are actually making these decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure out of those 28,000 accounts which are voting, if you the top token holders, maybe another 500 to 1,000 accounts, they are making the decisions because 90% of the accounts do not hold enough tokens to make an impact. Mm-hmm. So we need to build more proxies. We need to go, and I think I will go and fight against exchanges. Like Bitfinex is right now allowing proxies. People are very happy with it. I'm not happy with it because it doesn't allow free voting. Show me a single wallet where there is no Bitfinex. Every Bitfinex proxy account has a Bitfinex in it automatically. That is not a fair voting. So if I am a proxy, so I have a proxy account and I have 1,077 people voting with me, I cannot go register myself on Bitfinex as a proxy. So this is not a fair system. We still have more than 40-50% tokens locked into exchanges. We need those tokens to have a way of voting, or we have to keep educating people to get their tokens out of the exchanges and get into their own wallets. So these are the first steps to create a governance model, rather than bringing policy and stamping it with the current vote, where we have limited people making decisions.
So you're saying that Bitfinex currently doesn't allow outside proxies, but do they proxy themselves?
So they have created multiple proxy accounts. So they take the proxy, they bucket you into the fixed choices which they have created.
Okay.
And because they cannot create a single, so it's not actually scalable because there are so many combinations. So you have 300 BPs, you have 30 voting. So if you multiply 330 times, that's the kind of combinations you are facing to implement, which is impossible. So I'm not complaining that they are not putting an effort. What I'm saying is it's still not fair. They are creating a specific combination. They have put limits on, you cannot vote if you have a few tokens. You need to have minimum number of tokens. So they're only allowing big voters. The second part is they do not allow all the block producers down the chain. They only take the top block producers. Then they have, out of those also, they have created a very specific mix of block producers into their proxy accounts, and you can choose from them. And of course,
I understand. Uh-huh.
And of course, they have kept themselves in all of them because they want to benefit from it. So while means I may be wrong because I don't see all the wallets of Bitfinex, but I see the top wallets, and I see all of them have Bitfinex in it. So my question is, if you dig deeper, they have couple of other block producers also there, which are always there. So I don't know if there's a collusion there. So while the intent is there, people are very happy. I see some of people commenting, oh, they have open sourced their code, and there are limitations. So just hiding behind technical limitations of creating so many different accounts and combinations, they are giving a perception of being fair while it is not really fair for a democracy. Okay. So that is what I'm trying to highlight, that it's not something which we can ignore, that there is something which can be happening. And Bitfinex is still the best of the other exchanges. If you look at some other ZB, Huobi, then in Korean exchanges, Upbit and Bithumb, which are huge wallets, they are like in top 10 wallets on EOS right now. And those people do not even allow proxy voting. So this is, so Bitfinex is still getting a lot of praise because at least they're allowing proxy voting, even though it's faulty, even though it's not the best. At least they have opened the doors for it. But today we don't have any great way of getting people involved. And those are the real millions of people, trust me. Like if you look at the exchange voters, exchange people, I can't believe that we have only 100,000 people owning EOS. EOS is a number 5 cryptocurrency in the world right now. And there are maybe 1 million or more than 1 million people who own it. But the problem is that it's through centralized exchanges. And when we are trying to build a democracy, we are not able to bring them for voting. And that is these are the problems we need to solve first before we jump onto referendums and claiming that we got the community voice and we are implementing some change backed by community voice.
Are these other exchanges voting themselves, or are those tokens just not used?
I think some of them, like ZB, Huobi, they are definitely voting for themselves because they have huge voting pool, and they are always in top 3 or 4. I don't see how that is possible without using their wallets. Then, of course, means I have not investigated all the way. I mean, maybe there are cases where they have real whales who are supporting them and they own that much EOS. But either way, it is these are the exchanges which I can highlight. Korean exchanges, the BitTherms and Upbit. I don't think they're voting with all their strength. See, all these exchanges, they need to be liquid. See, how they make money is less by being a block producer, more by trading tokens.
Yeah.
Everyday volumes of EOS is much higher. So you need to understand that they will not even allow staking of all the tokens because they need to keep them liquid and trade on them.
Yeah.
So it's not like, let's not talk about only the problem of these people misusing their wallets. It's about the whole system of centralized exchanges, which is not healthy for EOS ecosystem because these are mostly liquid tokens. They do not make any impact and users do not see any benefits. And I'm really disappointed, I think, after the Rex discussion and what Dan Larimer had started with of rewarding token holders for staking. Somehow it got lost and we are not seeing any updates. So I would say Block.one has to take some responsibility here. And if not, I would like to see community-based initiatives here. So I think Chintai is one program I was waiting for, and I hope that picks up. And we need to start giving staking rewards to people. And that will be a huge drive to get people out of their exchanges and own their own tokens. So these are the kind of things we need to support. And before we jump onto conclusions about referendums and that they have the community voice.
Yeah, staking rewards will have a huge impact on the community. Absolutely. That's. I was just talking to Steve at EOS Tribe a couple days ago, and I think that he's coming back to start pushing on Shintai some more and working on that. He's one of the contributors to that because they were getting the referendum voting portal up recently. So hopefully we'll see some another push towards Shintai here coming up. But yeah, that staking and that's something that that matters a lot more to the standard community members, the general community members, the ability to stake your tokens and be rewarded for holding on and being a part of the EOS blockchain. So yeah, I hope to see that come back as well. Absolutely. So what other kind of general thoughts do you have about EOS, or what do you think at this point? What do you think is the kind of the overall thing that we should be focused on, or that we need to fix with EOS moving forward?
So I think we need to take a step back and say that what is the achievement of EOS today? I think we need to focus on that. We need to bring more and more applications forward. We need to support the ecosystem. We need to build education base of how to develop on EOS. So while we discussed a lot on the governance part. So governance should not be the highlight of a blockchain. It should be in the background. And what should be in the focus? What we should be talking about is how we can support more app developers, how we can bring in bigger crowd of projects, bigger kind of maybe beginners, maybe like how was Apple or Android became successful? Not because they built great phones, because they built an ecosystem of developers. People wrote apps on their phones, and those apps became successful, which in turn made the platform successful. So we need to get those people who really deserve the attention, who are going to make the EOS successful is the app developers. We need to bring them on board. We need to put them in front and ask them what they need and how will they use this system better? How will we improve the performance? So one example is this whole CPU thing, which has been troubling a lot of people. Like you stake certain CPU, certain tokens for your CPU, and suddenly you see that you cannot transact anymore because your CPU ran out. So I think these are the kind of things which people have to think about and see whether they can, like block producers have to talk more about that. They have to talk about how to fix these issues, how to get people to have better performances, like the apps to have better performances. And so I talked to, I think, as I said, like we did our first BP focus series with the EOS authority. I talked to them about it, and they have pretty good points that the app developers need a lot of mentoring. They need a lot of help from block producers on how they can really utilize the system, because ultimately you are running an infrastructure for them. Ultimately you are running a node which is going to be used for real apps, and I don't see a lot of top block producers doing it. I see a lot of backup block producers putting a lot of effort. So my goal is to talk to them, bring them forward, and see if I can help them, or any other media members, or people like you and me. We need to focus on that more than talking about governance, because governance right now, as I said, it's pretty early days. We have a lot of time to work on it. We have a running chain. It is working. It has no issues. We are making very significant progress. We have done amazing things in 3 months. And we need to focus on how we can keep building on it rather than blocking everything because of some political issues.
Yeah, that's a good take. I think that don't try to take such giant steps all at once is kind of a way to sum that up. We're going good, and very deliberately take baby steps. Baby steps are the biggest steps. So do it right here as we go. Where's the best place to people to find you, Raman? I know you've got Investing with a Difference, your YouTube channel. How do people contact you? Where do they find you?
Yes, I think right now, Investing with a Difference YouTube channel is the best place. We keep updating there. We keep posting videos, especially on EOS. Other than that, of course, we post our Telegram link on our YouTube channel. We have a pretty good community forming there, and we are having some serious discussions on EOS. Then also we try to help as many people as we can on any basic questions around EOS. Then we do have a Facebook group that was beyond EOS. We were doing overall crypto education. It's kind of slow because Facebook is not the best platform to interact, but we do have that. We are building our website, investingwithadifference.com. But I would say Telegram is the best place to reach out to me and to interact with the rest of the Investing with a Difference community.
All right, great. I will put your links in the show notes. And then as far as I go, Happy Money Man on YouTube and Happy Money Man 1 on Twitter. And my favorite project going right now is the EOS podcast, which this is going to be on the EOS podcast so people can get it on audio. Been having a great time with that. I think that the ability for people to listen to conversations like this while they're driving in their car, commuting, it opens up a whole different area, because a lot of times YouTube just, sitting and watching an hour and a half long video is people are going to watch Avatar instead. So yeah, the EOS podcast is my baby, my pet project right now. Do you have any kind of final thoughts as we wrap things up here, and then I'll close the show out for us?
No, thank you. I think it was much longer than what we expected, because it was great conversation, and I love to talk about EOS. And I think my final thoughts are that EOS is one of the projects which can really make blockchain real in the apps which we daily interact with. So we should all focus on that. We should look at how we can contribute. I believe that the best thing happens when we talk about positive things and we bring community together around positive thoughts. So that is something which all of us should focus on. The good thing is that 99% of people I talk to, even if I do not agree in EOS community, they have good intention at their heart. So that is something which excites me about this community. It's a very, very passionate, very talented set of people. And that is something which will keep this project going. I have no doubt about it. And I want people to participate. I think that's the best way. If you do not agree with something, go participate. There are a lot of places you can go join. You can join EOS Alliance discussions. You can join a lot of Telegram channels. It's a very, very good community which is listening. And I think what you are doing is a great job of creating media around it, bringing more people. And that's what I try to do as well in Investing with a Difference channel. And I think we just need to keep doing this and make an educated investor and educated community member. So I think not everybody is in it for investment. A lot of people are there for actually participating in it, in this revolution. And I would like to encourage that and say that do not get worried about what's happening in discussions, because we tend to get attracted towards debates and negative thoughts. While if we focus on positives, there are many more. and we need to keep highlighting that and educate people from outside EOS world. I think we need to talk passionately about EOS if we really believe in this project, and that's what all of us can do.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to sum it up. My crypto friends, our EOS friends, we're kind of all on the same page here. We're all on the same team, and the fact that there's so many different wonderful opinions is this is one of our strengths. So let's be part of the revolution together, man. We're in beautiful times, Raman. It's been great to meet you, and thanks for coming on the show. And I can't wait to see you in the near future. We're both from the Bay Area, so
yes, that was a great surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. So our EOS community is strong out here. Cheers to you, my crypto friends, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Cool. Well, that was